My mother practically begged me to fly home for the holidays. I'm Jessica Martinez. I'm 28 years old. And like a complete fool, I actually believed this Thanksgiving might be different. She video called me in Seattle at 2 in the morning, tears streaming down her face, going on about how we miss you so much and the family really needs you here. 14 hours of travel, a red-eye flight, one lengthy layover, a dead laptop battery, and I still arrived at her doorstep in Phoenix with a carry-on packed with presents for my sister's children. I was completely drained, reeked of stale airplane air, and my shoulders were screaming in pain. I pressed the doorbell, pulse racing slightly, foolishly hoping she'd embrace me the way she did when I was little. The door swung open abruptly. No greeting. No, how was your journey? No warm hug. Just my mother eyeing my luggage and announcing, as if it were the most obvious thing ever, "You're watching your sister's kids while we take our family vacation." My sister Amanda appeared in the doorway, designer sunglasses perched on her head, overnight bag slung across her shoulder, her children clinging to her legs. She grinned and said, "Hey kiddos, don't get your sticky fingers on Aunt Jess. She just got off a plane." They all burst out laughing like I was some kind of joke. My parents, my sister, the children, everyone chuckling while I stood there with messy hair and a maxed-out credit card from booking last-minute flights. I didn't scream. I didn't break down. I just felt something inside me shut down completely, like a circuit breaker flipping off. I smiled calmly, placed my suitcase down in the hallway, looked my mother directly in the eyes, and said one single sentence. That was the exact moment everything changed. The laughter died instantly. The blood drained from their faces. My mother kept repeating, "No, you can't, there's no way." By the time I finished, their perfect getaway wasn't happening anymore. Their mortgage was suddenly their problem, and I was finally done being their unpaid childcare provider and personal ATM machine. Stay until the end and I'll explain exactly how one supposedly ungrateful daughter destroyed her family's ideal holiday and reclaimed her entire life in the process. The interesting part is that the second I spoke those words, the entire room went completely still. But to really grasp why, you need to understand what these people standing at that door had been doing to me for years. My mother didn't just miss me when she video called from Phoenix. 3 weeks before that 2 a.m. call, she had already sent me screenshots of ridiculously expensive resort packages, suggesting that she and my father could never possibly afford something like that unless I could help out a tiny bit. Just this one time. Just this one time was how every single request always began. When my father needed back surgery, I wired the money. When my sister Amanda drained her credit cards on her online boutique business idea, I helped her consolidate everything. When the furnace died and the mortgage payment was overdue, I transferred funds, and then my mom posted pictures the following week from some trendy new restaurant in Scottsdale. I live in a studio apartment in Seattle. I meal prep on Sundays. I take the bus to work in the pouring rain. And somehow I was still covering DoorDash orders and subscription services for a house I didn't live in on the other side of the country. Here's the thing. This time, before I even booked my own plane ticket, I paid close attention. I saved every Venmo transaction, every Zelle receipt, every, "Thanks, sweetheart, we'll pay you back when things settle down" message. I also discovered something else. An email from the mortgage company with my name listed as a co-signer on a loan I definitely didn't remember agreeing to. Because several years ago, they had added me as a co-borrower just to qualify for better terms, and I'd been covering the payment gaps ever since. So while my mother was crying on video chat about how the kids ask about you constantly, and Emma won't stop wondering when Aunt Jess is visiting, I was sitting on my futon in Seattle, staring at my banking app, realizing that the only time my family acknowledged me as part of the group was when a bill needed paying. I almost refused. I almost told her to sort it out on her own. But then a different idea struck me. If they were prepared to drag me across the entire country to exploit me as free babysitting and a walking credit line, I was finally ready to show them what happens when I stop participating in their game. I booked my flight. But I also scheduled a consultation with a financial planner, downloaded 3 full years of bank statements, and had a straightforward document prepared using an online legal template. So when I stood in that doorway in Phoenix, while Amanda smirked and my mother announced my childcare duties like it was already settled, I wasn't just the exhausted, jet-lagged daughter they were accustomed to manipulating. I rolled my suitcase inside, allowed the kids to jump excitedly around me, and followed them into the kitchen where their glossy vacation itinerary was spread across the counter like a beautiful promise. Resort photographs, departure times, family package in bold lettering. My mother tapped the brochure enthusiastically. "See, honey, this is exactly why we needed you here. The kids will stay with you while we finally take a proper vacation. You're always saying we should prioritize self-care." I looked at the resort name, recognized the card number on the booking confirmation displayed on her phone screen, and felt that same internal switch flip again. They assumed I had flown across the country to be their built-in nanny and bank account. I had actually traveled 14 hours to do something I should have done years earlier. So I smiled, asked my mother to gather everyone in the dining room so we can discuss a few things before your trip, opened my laptop on the table, and pulled up the collection of digital receipts that would transform their family vacation into the last time any of them viewed me as a free resource. My father settled at the head of the table like this was some kind of board meeting. My mother hovered near the kitchen counter, gripping that printed itinerary tightly. Amanda was scrolling through her phone, barely listening. Emma and Tyler were spinning in circles across the tile floor. I slid my laptop closer, angled the screen so everyone could see clearly, and said as calmly as possible, "Before anyone goes anywhere, we need to have a conversation about finances." Amanda groaned dramatically. "Jess, seriously? Right now?" My father mumbled something about inappropriate timing under his breath. My mother gave me that wounded puppy dog expression. "Sweetheart, we've been under tremendous pressure. Can we please not create conflict right before we leave?" I didn't raise my voice even slightly. I simply clicked open the first folder on my screen, labeled Martina's household, and opened a detailed spreadsheet. Every single line was dated, color-coded, and brutally transparent. "Last April," I began, "you called because the mortgage was 3 months behind. I transferred $1,400. In July, Amanda's business expenses maxed out her card. I sent $2,800. When the furnace broke, $950. When Dad's car needed brake work, $680. When the water bill was past due, $350 here, $425 there. Every single month for 3 years, there's been something." I scrolled slowly so they could absorb the amounts accumulating, highlighting specific entries as I spoke. "This doesn't include the Netflix, HBO Max, Amazon Prime, Spotify family subscription, your Costco membership, the phone plan, the random urgent Venmo requests that somehow always coincide with Prime Day or holiday sales." Amanda straightened in her seat, color disappearing from her face as she recognized her own "I promise I'll reimburse you next week" notes in the memo column. My mother's hand flew to her chest when she saw her text messages screenshotted beside deposits for gas money to visit Aunt Carol, followed by social media photos of her at an expensive spa. My father's jaw clenched when he saw the PayPal transfer labeled back surgery deductible and then the receipt for a brand new surround sound system that appeared the exact same week. "This isn't fair," my mother whispered hoarsely. "You're making us look like terrible people." I shook my head firmly. "I'm not making you look like anything. I'm simply showing you what actually occurred." Then I scrolled to the bottom row in bold text. The total figure sat there, massive and undeniable. "In the past 36 months," I said quietly, "I have sent this household just over $68,000. The room went absolutely silent. Amanda blinked rapidly. My father stared at the wall. My mother kept whispering, "That can't be accurate, that's impossible," as if repeating it enough times would alter the mathematics. I reached into my bag and retrieved a thin stack of printed documents, sliding them onto the table next to their vacation itinerary. "This," I said, "is a straightforward agreement. It's not a lawsuit. It's not me taking you to court. It's simply documentation that all of you acknowledge owing me this money and agree to start repaying it. Even if it's gradually, $75 a month, $150, whatever you can manage." I had it drafted using a legal template. My financial planner reviewed it. All it states is that this, I tapped the $68,000 on the screen, was not a gift. My father finally erupted from his shock. "We're family," he barked. "You don't put family into debt like this. What are you planning to sue your own parents?" I met his gaze steadily. "Family doesn't hide a mortgage under their daughter's name and call her when payments are late. Family doesn't spend her money on vacations and brunch and then tell everyone she abandoned them." My mother flinched as if I'd physically struck her. Amanda grabbed the papers, skimmed the opening paragraph, and her voice cracked. "This is absolutely insane. I can't repay this. None of us possibly can. I leaned back in my chair. I'm aware, and I'm not expecting you to not all at once. But I am finished living in a reality where you pretend to be victims while I'm portrayed as some selfish career woman across the country. If you ever tell a neighbor or a relative or post on Facebook that I left you with nothing, I will share these numbers. I will show them every transfer, every bill I covered, every time you chose Starbucks over the electric bill because you knew I'd rescue you. My mother shook her head repeatedly, whispering, No, absolutely not, Jess. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't humiliate your own family. I shrugged. I'm not planning to as long as you stop lying about what happened. Then I clicked to another browser tab, displaying their resort reservation confirmation. The familiar logo filled the screen along with their names, dates, and a small note at the bottom showing the last 4 digits of the payment card on file. My card. And about that family vacation you're also excited about, I added, my voice remaining calm. You might want to prepare yourselves for this next part. My father frowned. What are you talking about? I pointed to the status line beneath the reservation number. Canceled. 4 days ago, I said. I contacted the resort and the airline. Since the bookings were made using my card and my account, I had every legal right. The package has been fully refunded. The flight credits have been transferred. So when I told you at the door that I wasn't babysitting while you went on vacation, I closed the laptop halfway, just enough to see all their faces simultaneously. What I meant was there is no vacation anymore. Not without me, not with my money, not ever again on my dime. My father jumped up from his chair when he saw the word canceled, as if he could intimidate the computer screen into changing. You had absolutely no right, he snapped. Those are our tickets. I didn't even flinch. They were purchased with my card from my account using my money, I stated. The right was entirely mine. He opened his mouth to argue further, but I was already clicking to the next window. And that brings me to the house we're currently sitting in. On the screen appeared an email from the mortgage lender with both our names listed. David Martinez and Jessica Martinez, co-borrowers. My father stared at it, his face draining of all color. My mother whispered, Jessica, please, not this. We explained it was just paperwork. I swallowed the familiar ache rising in my throat. You told me it was a formality, I said. You told me it wouldn't impact me. But I've been the one covering shortfall payments on this mortgage for years. Every time you missed a bill, it damaged my credit too. I clicked a button and a small video window appeared in the corner of the screen. My financial planner's face appeared, framed by her home office in Seattle. We had spoken before I ever boarded the plane. Hi, Jessica, she said professionally. Is now still convenient? I turned the laptop slightly so my parents could see her clearly. Perfect timing, I responded. You remember my family situation? My father hissed. Who is this person? I answered without looking at him. This is the professional who helped me understand exactly what being a co-borrower on your mortgage means and what my legal options are now that I'm done rescuing you financially. The planner introduced herself politely, then got directly to the point. In calm, measured language, she explained that as a co-borrower, my credit was tied to this property, that missed payments and constant shortfalls were harming me, and that I had the legal right to approach the bank and request removal from the loan. In practice, she continued, that means the lender would require the remaining borrower or borrowers to qualify independently. They might need to refinance, or in certain cases, if they cannot meet the requirements, the property may need to be sold to satisfy the outstanding debt. My mother shook her head frantically. You can't do that, she said, her voice trembling. We can't afford to relocate. We can't afford a higher payment. The planner's voice remained gentle. That's between you and the lender, ma'am. What I can say is Jessica is not obligated to keep her name on a loan she isn't genuinely benefiting from, especially when she's the one compensating for the difference. I thanked her and ended the video call, my heart pounding so violently I could feel it in my throat. The room felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in. My father turned on me. You're going to make your own parents homeless over some numbers on a computer screen? I looked him straight in the eyes. No. I'm going to stop allowing you to gamble with my future while acting like I owe you my entire existence. If you can afford resorts and plane tickets when you think I'll be here to provide childcare, you can afford to sit down with a banker and figure out how to pay for your own house. I reached into my bag again and pulled out a folded letter. This is my formal notification that I'll be stopping all automatic payments related to this property, I said. The bank will contact you directly from now on. I'm also closing the joint checking account Mom convinced me to open just for emergencies. I air quoted the words involuntarily. My mother made a choked sound. But that's where the grocery money comes from, she said. That's how we pay utilities. How are we supposed to manage everything? I took a breath, steady and controlled. The same way every other adult in this country does, I replied. With your own income, with your own budgeting, with your own consequences when you overspend. I opened another tab displaying the monthly automatic withdrawals I had established over the years. Mortgage supplement, electricity, internet, streaming bundles, grocery deliveries, car payment top-ups. All of them had my name next to the word payer. As of today, I said, my cursor hovering over the cancel button for each one, these stop. You'll receive your own bills in your own names. If they're late, that's between you and the companies, not me and my credit score. Amanda finally spoke up, panic rising in her voice. Jess, you can't just pull everything away at once. At least give us time. I'm looking for more hours. I'll sign up for more rideshare shifts. I swear, just don't destroy us like this. I turned to her. You're 32 years old, I said. You have 2 children. You should have been doing that years ago without me hovering in the background as a safety net. She stared at the table, jaw clenched tight. For a second, I almost weakened. Almost slipped back into the role they had written for me, the fixer, the silent helper, the girl who would cry in the shower and then open her banking app and make everything disappear. But then I remembered how they had laughed at the door. How my mother had said, you're watching the kids like it was a line item on her to-do list. And that softer part of me shut right back down. I hit cancel on the automatic payments one by one. Confirmation emails pinged my phone. My mother's breathing accelerated. My father sank back into his chair, staring at nothing. This is cruel, he muttered. You're punishing us. I shook my head. No, I'm finally stepping out of a role you all wrote without asking me, and I'm giving you the opportunity to be honest about what you can actually afford without hiding behind my bank account. I closed the laptop and stood up, my legs shaky but steady enough. After this, I said, if you decide to tell anyone that I abandoned you, just remember, I have every receipt, every bill, every transfer. I'm done being the villain in the story you tell other people to make yourselves feel better. I picked up my suitcase and added quietly, you wanted a real vacation. Maybe this is it, a vacation from pretending I'm your built-in solution to every terrible decision. Let's see how you handle life without that. My father finally exploded when he saw me rolling my suitcase toward the hallway. He jumped up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the tile. If you're walking out after this pathetic display, don't bother coming back, he barked. You're not welcome in this house if you're going to hold money over our heads. My mother reached for my arm. David, stop. She just needs to calm down. We can talk about this, she said, but she didn't actually move to stand between us. Amanda stared at the floor, silent. I paused in the doorway, hand on my suitcase handle, every muscle in my body trembling. A part of me wanted to drop everything, apologize, say I'd figure something out like I always had. Instead, I straightened up and said, you're the ones who decided my value here was measured in what I pay for. If I'm not welcome without my credit card, then I was never really welcome at all. My father jabbed a finger toward the door. Get out, he said. And don't come crying to us when Seattle chews you up and spits you out. I almost laughed at that. Seattle wasn't the city that had been eating me alive. This kitchen was. I stepped outside into the Arizona sunshine and pulled the door shut behind me. No one followed. No one called my name. The only sound was Emma and Tyler arguing about a video game from the living room, blissfully unaware that their vacation had just evaporated. I ordered a rideshare and dragged my suitcase to the curb, feeling more displaced than I actually was. The driver loaded my bag into the trunk and asked, "Where to?" I took a breath and gave him the address I had never shared with my parents, a high-rise building in downtown Phoenix, 20 minutes from their quiet suburban street, but a completely different universe. 7 months earlier, after one too many midnight money transfers and guilt trips, I had used my savings and my steady graphic design salary to put a down payment on a small one-bedroom condo. I told my family I was just thinking about relocating back to Arizona eventually, but I had already signed the paperwork. The plan was to move in gradually, quietly, once I figured out how to separate myself from their finances without detonating everything. Tonight proved there was no gentle way to do it. When the car pulled up in front of the glass building, it felt surreal. I swiped my key fob, wheeled my suitcase through the lobby I'd only visited twice, and rode the elevator to the 6th floor. The condo smelled like fresh paint and new flooring. Not like anyone's cooking or stress or desperation, just empty. Mine. I dropped my suitcase in the middle of the living room and stood by the window overlooking the city lights. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't buzzing with, "Can you send something until payday?" Or, "The card declined, can you fix it?" I opened my banking app and went through the last remaining things I still paid for that weren't in my name. The family Netflix account canceled. The Hulu bundle canceled. The Spotify family plan, the shared cloud storage, the random Apple charges for games the kids had downloaded. Canceled, canceled, canceled. Each confirmation email felt like cutting a string that had been wrapped around my ribs for a decade. I brewed myself a cup of cheap grocery store coffee in my brand new, barely stocked kitchen and sat cross-legged on the floor because I didn't even own a couch yet. In the quiet, without my mother's constant sighing or my father's television blaring, the doubts rushed in. What if I'd gone too far? What if they really couldn't keep the electricity on without me? What if I had just become this selfish, ungrateful daughter my father always warned me not to be? Then I remembered how my mother had opened the door like I was hired help showing up for a shift. I remembered Amanda joking about the kids getting their sticky fingers on me while they all laughed, assuming I'd just slide into place and make their plans possible. And underneath the fear and the guilt, something else settled in my chest for the first time in years. A thin, quiet layer of peace. They were going to feel the impact of my absence without question. The bills would arrive, the late fees would accumulate, and the life they'd constructed on top of my invisible paycheck would start to crumble. But tonight, in this tiny, echoing condo, there was no one to save except me. I took a sip of coffee, opened my laptop again, and watched as new emails started rolling in from the bank, the utility companies, the streaming services, all of them confirming what I already knew. For the first time, my family was on their own. The first indication that my decisions were actually affecting them didn't come from a phone call or a text message. It came from Facebook. About 10 days after I moved into the condo, my friend Rachel sent me a screenshot with a brief message. Have you seen this?" It was my father's profile, his name right there above a long, dramatic status about how some children forget who raised them the moment they get a decent job out of state, and how he and my mother were left with nothing right before the holidays. He never used my name directly, but he didn't need to. "Our daughter flew in from Seattle and decided money was more important than blood," he had written. "Please pray for us." Underneath were comments from people who had known me since middle school. "So sorry, David, that's terrible. Kids these days don't understand family. You gave her everything and this is how she repays you." One woman added, "If she won't help, maybe start a GoFundMe. We'll share it." My stomach twisted like I'd swallowed ice. He was doing exactly what I had warned him not to do, turning himself into the helpless victim and me into the cold-hearted villain, rewriting the entire story for an audience that had no idea how many times I had paid their bills in silence. For a minute, I paced my tiny living room, phone in hand, fingers hovering over the call button. I almost drove back to that house, almost begged him to take it down, almost offered to reinstate one of the payments just to make the humiliation stop. The old version of me, the one trained to fix everything, was clawing at the inside of my chest. Then I pictured the spreadsheet on my laptop. I pictured the email tying my name to their mortgage, the stacks of transfers, the way my mother had looked past my face and straight at my suitcase when she opened the door, like I was a delivery person dropping off a package. That image snapped me back. Instead of calling my father, I opened my email and pulled up the thread with my financial planner. I told her about the post, about how my family had been using my money for years while claiming they were barely surviving. And I asked one simple question. Was there anything else I needed to do to protect myself now that I had cut them off? She responded with a calm, detailed reply about documenting everything, saving copies of every transfer and bill, and making sure the bank and any relevant agencies had the complete picture of who had actually been paying what. She mentioned that in situations like mine, where one person is unofficially supporting a household that's also receiving certain benefits or claiming financial hardship, it can be appropriate to request that things be reviewed, just to ensure everything is above board. I didn't need a step-by-step manual. I just needed to know I wasn't crazy for thinking something was wrong. Over the following weeks, while my father kept posting vague complaints about ungrateful kids and this generation, envelopes started arriving at the house on their quiet cul-de-sac. I didn't see them myself, but my mother's frantic text told me enough. "Did you talk to the bank?" she wrote one morning. "We got a letter about reassessing the loan. They want updated information. Another day, early on a Tuesday, came a barrage of messages. There's something from the IRS. I'm freaking out. I thought you said everything was fine. Why are they asking questions? I had never said everything was fine. I had said I was done smoothing things over in the dark. The bank wanted updated documents for the mortgage. The utility companies wanted full payment instead of the partial ones I had been slipping in at the last second, like some invisible janitor cleaning up a mess no one else acknowledged. The comfortable fog they had been living in was thinning, and there was nothing left to hide behind except the reality of what they could actually afford. Amanda finally texted asking to meet at a coffee shop near my building. When she walked in, she looked smaller without the sarcasm to puff her up, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back messily, a delivery bag slung over her shoulder. She dropped into the chair across from me and got straight to it. "Dad needs to shut up online," she said, rubbing her face. "Those posts are making everything worse. He's embarrassing himself and Mom and honestly me too. And I know you're angry, but some of this, the letters, the calls, you did something, right?" I took a slow sip of coffee, letting her sit in the discomfort for a moment before I answered. "What I did was stop pretending we were all being honest," I said. "I talked to professionals. I made sure my name wouldn't go down with a ship I wasn't steering. If that means some systems are finally noticing where the money has actually been coming from, that's not my fault." She stared at the table, then admitted she had signed up for more shifts, sold some of her designer clothes and accessories, moved her kids into a smaller bedroom so she could take on a roommate and split rent. "It sucks," she said, voice low. "But for the first time, I'm actually seeing what things cost, like really seeing it. Groceries, gas, childcare. I didn't get it before. I just knew if it got bad enough, someone would text you." Meanwhile, my mother was selling designer handbags and home decor she had bragged about on social media, listing them on Marketplace with captions like, "barely used," when I knew exactly how often she had carried them to lunch dates. The new entertainment system my dad bought after his surgery, the one he justified as recovery entertainment, disappeared from the living room in my cousin's Thanksgiving photos, replaced by an old box set from the garage. Their truck was finally repossessed one gray morning after too many missed payments, the kind of scene they used to gossip about when it happened to a neighbor. Now it was their driveway, their sidewalk, their embarrassment as the tow truck hauled away a symbol of a lifestyle they could no longer fake. Through all of it, my father kept my number unblocked, but he never once called to apologize or tell the truth. He just kept throwing little grenades online, vague posts about betrayal and ingratitude, hoping someone would pick them up and carry them to me so I would feel guilty enough to crawl back. He told anyone who would listen that his daughter had abandoned him for money and status, conveniently leaving out that most of the money had been flowing in the opposite direction for years. I didn't respond publicly, didn't jump into the comments to defend myself, didn't write my own dramatic post with screenshots attached, even though the petty part of me desperately wanted to. I didn't have to. I had my receipts. I had my financial planner. I had my own credit finally starting to separate from theirs. And more importantly, I had distance. Every time I saw someone share his story about the cold daughter in Seattle, or heard through mutual friends that he was holding court at the bar about what a disappointment I was, all I could think was that if they knew the real math, if they saw even one page of that spreadsheet, they wouldn't be asking why I walked away. They would be asking how I managed to stay as long as I did. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around again, the Martinez house had transformed into a different universe, and so had mine. I found out the pieces in strange little ways. A tagged photo of my mother at a discount store instead of her usual boutique. A grainy picture of Amanda's kids in a small apartment instead of my parents' backyard. Comments from mutual friends asking if everything was okay. I didn't reach out. I focused on my job in Phoenix, on building my design portfolio, on decorating my condo one paycheck at a time. I bought a second-hand couch, an artificial plant for the corner, and hung up inexpensive string lights that made the place look warmer than it had any right to feel. Then, one rainy Wednesday in November, someone knocked on my door. When I checked the peephole, my stomach dropped. It was my mother. She looked smaller somehow. No full makeup, no carefully styled hair, just a tired woman clutching a reusable shopping bag to her chest like armor. I let her in, heart pounding. She stood in the middle of my little living room and turned in a slow circle, taking in the couch, the view, the small artificial tree with 4 mismatched ornaments. I didn't know it looked like this. she said softly. I always pictured you in something bigger, fancier. I shrugged. This is what I can afford without paying for 2 households. She winced like the words physically hurt. Then she opened the bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check, not for $68,000, not even close, but it was something. It's from selling things, she said quickly, eyes shiny. Handbags, some jewelry, that coffee table you hated. And I've been picking up extra shifts at the office. It's not much, but it's a start. I told Amanda we can't pretend it was all a misunderstanding anymore. For a second, I just stared at the check. Wasn't about the amount. It was about my mother, who had spent years acting like my money grew on trees, standing in my small, very human-sized living room and admitting out loud that she'd treated me like an ATM. She sat down on the edge of the couch and started crying, not the manipulative, loud sobbing from the 2 a.m. video call. Quiet, broken little sounds. Your father still says you betrayed us, she said. He tells everyone you turned on your family because you think you're better than us. But I can't keep saying it. Not after seeing those papers. Not after the bank letters. We did use you. I did. I sat next to her, leaving space between us. I'm not asking you to hate him, I said. I'm asking you to stop letting him rewrite what happened just so he doesn't have to feel guilty. She nodded, wiping her face. Amanda's working, she added. Like really working, driving late nights, doing warehouse shifts. She moved into a smaller place. The kids share a room now, but at least it's a place she pays for herself. She wanted me to tell you thank you for the spreadsheet. I actually laughed at that, a short surprised sound. I didn't make that for her, I said. I made it for me. She looked at me carefully. Do you think someday we could have a Thanksgiving where you come over and it's just dinner? No money talk, no hidden bills, just us? My throat tightened. Maybe, I said. But that only happens if everyone in that house understands I'm not their safety net anymore. If I come, it's because I want to, not because there's a payment due. She nodded again, stood up, and hugged me. A real hug this time, the kind I'd been chasing for years. When she left, I slipped the check into a drawer. I didn't cash it right away. I just needed to know that for once, the flow of money was pointed in the other direction. As for my father, the last thing I saw from him was another vague post about family turning their backs. I muted him, then finally blocked his profile and his number. It felt less like slamming a door and more like closing a wound that refused to heal. That Thanksgiving Eve, I sat alone on my couch, string lights blinking, a cheap mug of hot chocolate in my hands. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel obligated to be anywhere else. No flights, no babysitting schedule, no emergency transfers. Just quiet. Just mine. Here's what I learned. Family doesn't stop being family just because you say no. The people who truly love you will eventually adjust to your boundaries. The ones who were only there for what you could provide will call you selfish the moment you stop bleeding for them. It hurts. It's lonely. But sometimes distance is the only way to stop drowning in someone else's terrible decisions. So let me ask you this. If the people draining your bank account and your sanity share your last name, would you keep paying the price just to be called loyal? Or would you walk away like I did and finally give yourself permission to be your own family first? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop being the solution to everyone else's problems. Sometimes walking away isn't abandonment, it's survival. And sometimes the family you need to protect most is the one staring back at you in the mirror. The peace I found in that small condo wasn't about having more money in my account or finally owning my own space. It was about reclaiming something far more valuable, my dignity, my agency, and the right to say no without being made to feel like a villain. My mother's check still sits in that drawer, a small symbol that change is possible. Not immediate, not dramatic, but real. And that's more than I ever got in all those years of silent transfers and hidden bills. As for my father, I've made peace with the fact that some people will never see what they've done wrong. They'll rewrite history, play the victim, and convince themselves they're justified. But their narrative doesn't have to be mine. I get to write my own story now. And in this version, I'm not the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family. I'm the woman who finally chose herself after years of being everyone else's backup plan. And that's a choice I'd make again, every single time.